You know the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Well, the Nikon 55mm f2.8 is one of those perfect examples that embodies that sentiment. So, it was first released in 1979 and you can still buy it brand new. A 45-year production run must mean something, right? And it most certainly does, because this lens right here is not only one of the sharpest lenses I've ever used, but it's also extremely well built, works amazing as a portrait lens, and it costs absolutely nothing on the used market. This is a lens, I think, along with the famous 105mm f2.5, that everyone should own, regardless of your camera system, because it adapts perfectly with every modern mirrorless system. Now, I first heard about this lens while researching for the 105mm f2.5 review, which is also a great video that you should definitely check out. So I had actually looked up a list of the best Nikon AI AIS lenses, and this 55mm f2.8 is like always near the top of everyone's list as just being the most exceptional lens that Nikon has pretty much ever made. Everyone always says it's really, really sharp, it's got really beautiful micro contrast, it's very small obviously, and it's very, very affordable for what it is. And I've never actually owned a dedicated macro lens, so I was really, really excited to see what all the hype was about. And look, I will admit, when I first started photography over 10 years ago, I was never actually really interested in buying a dedicated macro lens because for some reason, I thought that you could only take photos of close-up things with it, which is very, very embarrassing to admit. But if you're in the same position that I was 10 years ago, no, you actually can use a macro lens to take photos of more things than just stuff that's close up. So I went on eBay and I started looking. And like the 105 2.5, the 55 2.8 is very, very plentiful to find on eBay and also very, very cheap. So I purchased this CL8 copy for just 200 Australian dollars shipped. Yes, you could technically buy it brand new from B&H, but they're around 620 Australian dollars brand new. And given that you've got 45 years worth of used copies to choose from, I'd say that used is probably the better option. Also, be sure to subscribe to see more great photography content. So, when the lens came in, I was really, really impressed with its size and aesthetic. So this is actually a very, very small and I think very pretty lens. I love the orange numbers on the barrel. Orange is my favorite color. So it's nice to see that. And it's got a really beautiful, nice, super clicky aperture ring as well, which is also really good to see. But the one thing that I did notice when I got this lens was how stiff this focus mechanism, it's still pretty damn stiff. I mean, it's not unusable, but it is stiffer than I thought it would be. And given that the lens was supposed to be CL8, which, if you didn't know, it stands for clean, lubricate, and adjusted, with an emphasis on the lubrication, I was surprised that it was far stiffer than the 105's focus ring. But upon doing some research and contacting the seller and stuff like that, I found out that it's actually fairly common for this lens in particular to be this stiff, given its very, very long focus throw. And being a macro lens, you kind of want it to be a little bit stiffer to focus, so it's easier to actually accurately focus on subjects. Seeing as you've got such a long focus throw, I mean, this thing just goes on and on basically. And obviously when you've got it on a camera, it's not too bad. It's definitely gotten a little bit better just from using it. So maybe it was just like the fresh grease or something in there just was like making it a bit stiffer than usual. But I have asked a few people that have this lens as well, and they've all told me that it's a little bit stiffer than all their other Nikon lenses. So, you know, maybe a brand new copy wouldn't be this bad, but I actually would be really interested. So definitely let me know if you've got this lens. Is yours particularly stiff to focus with, or is this just my copy? I don't know. But let's ignore the stiffness for a second and talk about the image quality. Does a 45-year-old lens still hold up today? Well, like the 105mm, which I found to be exceptional on modern digital sensors, the 55mm f2.8 is, as everyone online says, unbelievable too. It is so bloody sharp, and yet it has such a beautiful character to the image that makes it a fantastic portrait lens on top of being an amazing macro lens as well. I was recently up in Queensland on the Gold Coast, and I took this lens along with my new Lumix S5 II out to a cool vintage car show called Cooley Rocks On to test it out. And let me tell you, this was like a mecca for boomers. I don't think I've ever seen this many vintage American muscle cars parked next to each other before, ever. And this lens performed absolutely amazing as well. So also while up in the Gold Coast, I went on a little walk around the neighborhood that I was staying in, and I captured a few more photos with this lens, and I was just so impressed with the images that I was getting out of it. It is razor sharp, and the bokeh that this has a very like vintage quality to it. I don't know, it looks really beautiful, and it's got really, really nice fall off as well. The one thing I will say though, when using it as a walk around lens, given the stiffness of its aperture ring and also how long the focus throw is, you can't really get like fast action with it. Whereas I feel like the 105, you can rack the focus on that really, really quickly. With this, you kind of need to be like, it would be great for like a landscape or just like a portrait where the person isn't moving, but I probably wouldn't want to do like street photography with this lens. I think it's just maybe a little bit too, it's a bit too slow for that. And I mean, while the 2.8 aperture is not going to give you the craziest background blur, like this isn't going to be like a 51.2 or something, it just makes it a lot easier to nail focus. And honestly, on a full frame sensor, I think 2.8 is actually fine for 55mm. I don't think you need the most craziest blown out backgrounds ever. I know that when the 105 review, I tested that lens on a Fuji, so on a crop sensor. And obviously on a crop sensor, you do need to multiply everything by 1.5 to get the actual effective focal length and also aperture too. So it's been really, really nice to use this lens on full frame and sort of use it to its fullest advantage. And I did use it on Fuji as well, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But what about the main selling feature of this lens, the macro ability? How good is it? Well, as far as dedicated macro lenses go, this only has a 1:2 magnification ability, so it's basically half of life size. And it has a close focus distance of 25 centimeters. So it's not quite 1:1 real life, but you can get an extension ring called the PK13, which will make it a proper 1:1 magnification, as well as reducing the minimum focus distance to just 22 centimeters. There is also the Nikon 60mm macro, which was the one that came after this. And I believe they manufactured both of them at the same time, which says a lot about how good this lens is, that they just kept making it. But that does have a 1:1 magnification ratio, and it is an autofocus lens, which is useless to me because I'm not using it on a Nikon camera. But look, it didn't really bother me. I'm sure there are probably more extreme macros out there, but I was looking at this more so from the perspective of being like a really good, like 50mm-ish lens that I can use for more than just macro photography, and also happen to do macro stuff with it. And I think for that, it's awesome, and it's really, really fun. I mean, shooting flowers and like plants and stuff like that is so much fun with this, and you can get really, really close up and get some really, really cool detail. And not to mention, this is also an amazing lens to use in video. So you get it's really, really cool to be able to get such close-up details, which makes it really good for B-roll shots. So I used it for a couple B-roll shots in the S5 II review as well. And also like just to show a little, I love this photo of like this really cute little mushroom, which has now become my default test for all macro photography. And then, you know, like talking about Fujifilm. So we're, using it on Fuji. Well, I think it works amazing on Fuji as well. So on my X-T5, the lens produces really, really sharp and really beautiful images, especially with that 40 megapixel sensor. But you do have to remember about the crop. So it does make it an 82.5mm lens, although the macro itself won't be any different. So I know some people have a little bit of confusion where they think that the crop will make it magnify more. It'll still have a 1:2 magnification factor, even on a crop sensor. So you do have to keep that in mind. You will still need that extension ring even on crop sensor. And I just cannot get over how sharp this lens is. I mean, even on modern digital sensors, which, as I said in the 105 review, like a lot of the vintage lenses that I've tried have all been sort of soft. And I mean, like it's a character for sure, but there is something about these old Nikon lenses, at least the ones that I've tried, they are just exceptional on digital as well. Just as good as they probably will be on film, which again, says a lot about these lenses, because digital sensors will point out the flaws in everything, especially really high resolution ones. And these vintage Nikon lenses are just, I mean, they're fantastic. And I'm definitely really, really interested in buying more because they just have this look and character to them. It's just, I don't know, it's honestly so much nicer than a lot of the modern lenses which I've tried. And just like the S5 II, which I recently reviewed as well, they just provide such crazy value for money that I wholeheartedly recommend anyone that is after a really, really awesome lens for not a lot of money to look into buying these. And again, like I said earlier on, regardless of your system, whether you're on Sony, whether you're on Canon, Fuji, Nikon, anything. I mean, Nikon probably would actually suit this the best, but they adapt so well. Buying an adapter for them is really, really cheap. I use this one from Earth. They don't sponsor me or anything, but I really like the adapters. I think they're pretty good quality. And what I like as well, they don't really rattle. So when you put them on, they're like really solid. It kind of feels like you're attaching it to a native mount. It's just awesome. And like I said, you know, $200 for this lens, and I guarantee you this thing will blow any lens out like sub $500 out of the water. There are so many people out there like promoting all these like new Chinese lenses that are coming out, and they're great, that's good too, but there is so much value to be had if you just look a little bit in the past and you look at these lenses, because especially these Nikon lenses are just brilliant. Really, really good. I honestly can't recommend them highly enough. And it's funny, like on the 105 review, I feel like some people were like, oh, you know, like don't make this video because it'll make these lenses really expensive and hard to get. They still make these lenses. Like 45 years later, Nikon's still making these, and there are so many of them on eBay that you can find for cheap. I don't think this review is going to drastically change the cost of them. This isn't some weird, obscure niche lens. So get in on it, pick it up, pick up a copy, try it out. If you don't have a dedicated macro lens, this is honestly a great excuse to get one. And yeah, I think it's honestly one of the biggest advantages of using a modern mirrorless system is you just have access to such a plethora of amazing lenses, even if they weren't initially produced for the system that you are using now. What do you guys think? I mean, have you ever tried the 55mm f2.8? What other vintage Nikon lenses should I try out? So I'm really, really curious to hear your thoughts, because I'm definitely keen to try and get some more. I had a couple great suggestions in my 105 review, and I'm always open to hear some more. And yeah, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.